Hey guys, so welcome back to the last part of our road to World War II. This is step six. This is the Spanish Civil War. The Spanish Civil War is super important in the road to World War II, especially kind of what we can take away from the Spanish Civil War. So I've talked about Spain a little bit before. Essentially, the Spanish Civil War is a dress rehearsal for World War II. It's a conflict where we see a lot of different political ideology come into play and battle each other here. So we've got kind of a communist party fighting against a fascist party, fighting against kind of the social moderates that were already in power in Spain. All right, so it's a multifaceted conflict, and we see a lot of countries get involved in the Spanish Civil War in one way, shape, or form. Obviously, the Soviets come in to back their communist friends. You've got Portugal and Mexico and the United States and getting involved and voluntarily sending people there. And then you've got Germany and Italy and Japan sending people to back their kind of fascist allies. So you have a lot of countries getting involved. You've got France and Britain that kind of turn the other cheek as the conflict is going on. So essentially, what we have here is Hitler is going to get involved under this veil right here. All right. So when it breaks out, he kind of tells the world that he is going to send his military there to combat communism. And Britain and France do nothing but give him the good old two thumbs up here. Again, the real enemy in Europe was communism. It was not fascism. They weren't that afraid of fascism. So they let him do it. And so Hitler is going to roll through with his military into the Spanish Civil War. Um, the real reasons that Hitler get involved in the Spanish Civil War, or gets involved in the Spanish Civil War, I should say, is to test out his military, right? He needs to know what he's working with before he goes in that war for Lebensraum that he outlined in the Hossbach Memorandum, right? So he is going to send his Air Force, his brand new toys, right? He has no idea how strong his Air Force can be. Air Force in general is something that people are really feeling out. It was used in World War One, but in a very limited role. And very kind of modern military people knew that the Air Force is where World War II, well, not World War II, but where the next wars were going to be fought. It was going to take a whole new theater of war. It's no longer land and sea. It is now land, air, and sea. So he wanted to see how good his Air Force would be. So he is going to send the German Condor Legion, which is part of the Luftwaffe. All right. And there's a very specific type of plane that he is going to use. I'm going to use my finger here in this, and never turns out good. All right, it's called a Stukas. All right, it's a dive bomber. All right, so essentially what dive bombers do, and when we get to World War II, we're going to talk about a lot of different kind of planes and stuff. Um, it helps to understand. This is what it is right here, right? The German Junker. There are a couple names for it, but a dive bomber. It flies high, all right, and then it drops down really low. It drops its payload, it drops its bombs, and then it flies back up in the air. It's a dive bomber. So he's going to send his dive bombers to Spain and wreak a lot of havoc on the Spanish military and Spanish cities in particular. Um, uh, this right here, we've talked about this before. If you remember in my classroom, when you walk in, there's that abstract painting. It was called Guernica, right? So the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, is in 1937 going to bomb the city of Guernica. Sorry. So in 1937, the Germans go and they bomb Guernica. All right. This city is leveled. The city is completely destroyed. This is something that we have never really seen before. All right. This is that picture that I was just talking about. This is the picture Guernica by Pablo Picasso. The abstract vibe, the chaotic vibe that you get from this was indicative of what actually happened in the city in 1937. All right. This is what it actually looked like. All right. Think about this. I know it's hard for us to envision this because we have seen a world where atomic bombs were used. All right. And we can look back at pictures of that and be like, oh, okay. It's almost normal to us. This wasn't normal back then, right? This is the first time that a plane drops bombs on a city like this. In World War One, the planes, I told you, the first planes, they're throwing like grenades off the side of the planes. All right. They don't have dive bombers in World War One, and World War One was fought in French farmland, right? It wasn't fought in cities. So we're going to take a lot out of the Spanish Civil War, and here are kind of three very easy ways to break it down. One, one thing that we learn, Hitler's military is far stronger than he thought. All right. The damage that it's able to enact on all of the forces that are fighting in the Spanish Civil War is far greater than what he could have imagined. All right. Two, the next war is going to make the First World War look like a drop in the bucket. All right. The next war, the next modern war, is going to be very, very, very destructive. And it's not only going to be soldiers that die, it's going to be civilians that die. And this idea of total war is really apparent to everyone who kind of knew what was going on at the time. What Hitler did in Guernica is going to do nothing but instill fear in the eyes of the British and the French. Because yes, it was Guernica in 1937, but it might be London or Paris next, and that was scary to them, right? They knew that this war would not be a trench war out in the countryside. That there were going to be millions upon millions of people that would be impacted by this war, not economically, not socially, but in terms of life and death, right? That this was going to have a much higher body count than the First World War. And that is really what's going to solidify this idea of appeasement. All right, there's the word right there. I want you to remember a name. All right, Neville Chamberlain is going to be the British Prime Minister at this time, and he's really going to become the one that entrenches in this idea of appeasement and backing off and let Germany do what it wants to avoid war. And then this right here is the third thing that we learn, or not learned in effect. Japan, Germany, and Italy are going to sign the Anti-Comintern Pact in 1937. It means that they are going to unite as far right-wing military-style governments to fight communism because they felt that was the biggest threat to their own success as countries. And that is right here, that is eventually going to turn into an offensive military alliance, which creates the axis of evil, which is the Axis powers of World War II. Here we have a picture that depicts the Anti-Comintern Pact. This picture, it's kind of funny, but it actually tells you a lot, right? So the Japanese, all right, that's the Imperial Japanese flag down here, if you don't recognize that. They are really going to be known for their Air Force, all right? Their plane in World War II is called a Zero, all right? That's the Japanese plane. It's one of the best planes in the world until America develops a plane to kind of combat it, but we'll get into that when we actually get into World War II, all right? The Germans are known for their tanks. The German tanks are called Z-E-R. Panzers, all right? Panzers are German tanks. There are a couple different types of panzers, but if you see the word panzer, it's talking about a German tank. If you see the word zero, it's talking about a Japanese plane. And then last but not least, all right, not that Italy has anything that is that great, but they do have a formidable navy, and they're really going to be able to control the Mediterranean. And when World War II eventually does break out, Italy is going to sail that navy into North Africa, all right? And they're going to take North Africa, and that's really where a lot of the fighting is going to take place. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think it's Europe and the Pacific, but North Africa was a theater of war as well, and we'll talk about that when we get to World War II. All right, spoilers, I'm going to go back to here. That's going to be the end for this video. The Spanish Civil War is a little complex, so I wanted to make it a standalone one. The next video that I post will be step 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, and I'll go through that in one fell swoop. I hope you guys picked up on those three main effects of the Spanish Civil War. Hitler has a very formidable military, especially the Air Force. Modern war is going to be very destructive, and that's solidified the idea of appeasement. And last but not least, the Anti-Comintern Pact of Japan, Germany, and Italy that eventually turns into the Axis powers moving into World War II. Be good.